Hi, this is Wayne Zell, and you're listening and watching Blueprint for Wealth, a podcast, videocast that's designed to help you realize your personal dreams of wealth and freedom. And I can't think of a better guest to have to talk about accomplishing your dreams of wealth and freedom. And that's Chris Voss, who, for some reason, he agreed to appear on our little puny podcast. Welcome, Chris. Welcome to Blueprint for Wealth.
Oh, thank you for having me. I certainly appreciate coming. And you have a great podcast. I've seen it and listened to it. I have your book, too.
I appreciate it. And, today we're going to talk about you today because there's a lot to talk about. I was just astonished by some of the statistics I was reading. For example, Chris's podcast, which has been on for, I don't know, over 15 years, close to 16 years now, right?
Yeah, I'm tired of it.
Is ranked in the top 1% of all podcasts worldwide, which means that it's, in the top 27,000 out of 2.7 million podcasts that are out there. And that's pretty freaking amazing. So he's a Forbes top 50 social media influencer. He's all over Twitter. He's all over every social media outlet that you can imagine. And on YouTube, he's got over 53 million video minutes watched on almost 4,500 videos. So to me, it's mind-boggling. To learn how to market, you go to Chris Voss and listen to his podcast, but also if you can somehow get him to listen to you want to talk to this guy because he knows more about business and marketing than, any 15 people I can name. You're really involved in business ownership too. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you start out and get into all this stuff?
How did I start out and get into business?
Yeah,
being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Thank you for the intro though as well, and some of those accolades. I may need a coffee or pick me up after that because that sounds tiring. 15 years of this. It's one of those things where you start and then you wake up one day and go, "What have I been doing?" And then, and I'm going to ask for a raise. So thank you.
Well, you'll have to give yourself one.
I'm going to call my union and find out what the hell's going on. The story is told in my book, Beacons of Leadership, guilty plug. And basically, I didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. When I grew up, it was the great brick and mortar era of business. And being an entrepreneur meant you had to spend a lot of money to build something and put it forth and then build it and hope that it came. Nowadays you can just pay $20 and you got a website on GoDaddy and you're open for business. Yeah. And so I was just a young kid who had long rocker hair. I lived in Utah, actually the same city that Footloose was filmed in, with the same storyline of the oppressive religion and you can't dance and have any fun. And so I was a rocker. I wore a lot of rock concert t-shirts, not because my family was fairly poor. And that was about the only I got like 2 pairs of pants, 2 shirts or something from Sears, those awful shirts. And that was it. And so at 18, I was working at McDonald's and I had this long hair and the satanic t-shirts of Van Halen. And, because we all know clearly Van Halen worships the devil. And I don't know, you pick your band.
Love Van Halen. Love Wolfie too.
Yeah, and clearly, they're doing sacrifices on their stage every night and stuff back then, whatever. But, just anybody with long hair and had that rocker T-shirt sort of thing was of the devil in this community. And so one of the managers at McDonald's took a shine to me about me having long hair and these satanic T-shirts. And I was just a dumb kid and probably still am. And he wanted me to cut my hair. And he's like, why you always got to wear those shirts and cut your hair, and when you're a kid, when you're young, and for a lot of people that's their identity, their hair. Most of us are losing our identity at this point, me. But at least we got the beards going, so we got that to make up.
You got the beard rocking. I definitely.
I'm working on it. We're working on that Viking sort of beard.
Yeah.
And so at 18, he took the shine to me, and I was making, I don't know, $3.35 an hour. Is that what it was back then? People right now are going, what? And so he wanted me to cut my hair. And so this is one of my first times where I had to deal with some oppression and working around it and getting outside of the box. And I took in, I went to at first I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do? Do I got to cut this hair? Do I want this stupid job? Whatever, I'm just a kid. And then I realized that women have long hair. Duh. And so I went to the women in McDonald's and I said, hey, what are you doing about that long hair thing? Because, this boss, and they're like, hey, we got these hair nets. You go buy them for a couple bucks and you wear them up. So I started wearing them up in my hat and he couldn't tell. Right. And so he came along and he was so happy that he basically neutered me
Influenced your life.
Yeah. Just ruined me, taking my thing away. He was so proud of himself as a bully. That's because that's what he was. He was a bully.
Yeah.
And so I got away with it for about a month. And then one day he caught me taking my hair out of my hairnet and realized that, I'd won, and he fired me. So I came home, and for all of my summers growing up, my father had a subcontracting stucco business, and I'd learned how to trowel and do all the things. My mom back in the day was like, get the hell out of the house, go play with your father, go to work on the summers and get out of my hair. She loved me. But so I learned the business side of it. I didn't learn the sales and the money side of it, although I did learn collecting, and there's some great stories in the book about that. But I knew the business, and but I never sold. I was just some shy introverted kid. And so I came home and I go, hey, Dad, I'm fired. And he goes, what are you going to do? Because you're not going to sit around here. This is back in the day. And I says, I don't know, man. I don't know. And I was supposed to go to college. And he says, why don't you just, my old business, the stucco business, all the wheelbarrows and the cement stuff and all the trowels and stuff are in the backyard in the storage shed. He left the business behind. He goes, why don't you go get all that stuff? He goes, you can use my account at the old builder's supply. I'm sure it's still working, and you can go buy the cement. You know what to do. Why don't you just go do it? And
so he was out of the business.
He was out of the business. Yeah. I didn't take over his company. It was gone. He had no clients. He'd been out of it for 5 or 6 years, and all this stuff was just junk in his storage unit. My dad was a hoarder, so he kept everything. And he still had his account, thankfully, at the Economy Builder Supply. Okay. It was like $500, so I could go buy, the basics to get started. But then I had to learn to sell. So I had to go out. I'm this young 18-year-old thin kid who looks stupid and goofy and whatever. I'm out meeting with these very, very tough sailor type construction guys, and they're sitting me looking at me down going, who the hell are you? And I sold them. And I said, basically, hey, look, I know this business. And they're like, yeah, whatever, kid. And I'm like, yeah, I grew up, I know this business. So I'll do you a deal. Give me a house. I'll go do it. Okay. And if it's not done right, and you don't like the job, you don't have to pay me.
Wow.
And they're like, and if you tell contractors you don't have to pay somebody, that's like gold.
They'll do that anytime.
So like, yeah, we'll try that. Yeah, let this monkey boy go out and do that. So I did it, and people were like, holy shit, this guy knows his chops. And I built a business and clientele out of it and learned to sell. So that's how I got into being an entrepreneur. I didn't even think about being an entrepreneur until like, I don't know, a decade later, years later, like, oh, I started a business.
Did you ever go to college?
No. In fact, I was lined up because my parents were poor with a Pell Grant to go to the University of Utah.
Yep.
And suddenly I went from making $335 an hour to $18,000 a year with my little company in 1987, 1986, 89, 88, something like that.
Okay.
And so I thought I was rich. And then the beautiful part of the story that I tell in my book is 3 months later or 2 months later, I go back to that guy who fired me at McDonald's. And I shake his hand, and not in any sort of meanness, but I shake his hand. I said, you've changed my life. Thank you so much for being an asshole, because I make now $18,000 a month and you're still making $335 here, but you've changed my life. And what I really didn't realize, he really had changed my life in that moment, or I had, I guess. We did it together.
So part of the challenge of being an entrepreneur is not just learning how to sell and doing your job well, but then accumulating people around you that can do the job well for you so that you don't have to do it all yourself. How did that work out? How did you recruit and build your workforce?
Well, with that company, I just pretty much did it by myself.
Okay.
I skipped out of college. I canceled the Pell Grant, and I had to make a choice. Do I want to do this or do something else? And Well, the business was, what it was. I found out the hard way that you're supposed to save up for winter in Utah because it's a little hard to get that cemented dry in winter.
Yeah.
And so I had to go find other means to support myself and do business. And I fell out of love with the thing. And then it became this journey where once you have that drug, you have to constantly try and get it back. And, that's the entrepreneur bug. So I tried several iterations and of starting my own little companies and retail and trying to find something that wasn't so blue collar. And I eventually met up with a friend, worked with several CEOs and was an entrepreneur at the companies. And then finally found a friend who wanted to start a business and we launched it and it hit. It was a home runner.
What do you mean entrepreneur? What do you mean by that?
The final companies I worked for, I had one CEO who saw the potential in me and he elevated me to a level of being what we called an entrepreneur, where I was like a CEO junior for him. And I would be able to walk around the company and be able to look at all of our operations and go, why do we do things this way? It's the same thing everyone talks about. Why do we do things this way? And people go, I don't know. We always did it this way. And you're like, well, this is stupid. Whoever designed this was probably, half smart at the time, but there's always a way to constantly be improving. And so he gave me the last, as I talk about in the book, the last of my CEO training, the last few keys that I needed to be an entrepreneur. He was incredibly innovative, brilliant mind, psychotic mastermind. But I learned a lot from him. And
how long were you doing that? How long did you do that?
Work for him?
CEO. Mm-hmm.
About a year and a half. In the meantime, I was trying all my little side hustles and stuff. And finally, it came time where I went to him and I said, look, I really want to give a shot at this business. But I'm letting you know that my nights and my evenings and some of my attention is going to be on this focus. And I'm just being honorable to you and let you know that. And he said to me, he goes, hey, look, man, you keep doing all this side business. You're always working on trying to create your next thing. He goes, you're like me. I know where you're going. He goes, I'm going to give you 2 months salary. Okay. 2 months salary, which is I think it was like $2,000 a month back then. And he goes, I'm going to give you 2 months salary to go get this out of your system. But here's the deal. At the end of 2 months, if this thing doesn't kick ass, you have to come back and you have to work for me. No more side projects, no more little entrepreneur stuff. You just come work for me. And that's it. I don't want to hear about side projects anymore. But if this works, he goes, we actually need your company to come help us because we have someone hired that does the same thing. And we might end up hiring you. And if it works, then good for you. Because I think that's really where you're going. You're never.
So what kind of side hustles were you doing on the side while you were working with this guy?
Lots of retail stuff, like trying to buy things and sell into retail stores, wholesale retail things. God, there's a whole mess of little business cards I still have. There was we were always just trying to hustle something and trying to come up with some business idea. At one point, we bought a little boat and we're trying to make some money doing boat tours and stuff. I mean, anything and everything to get that drug back to being a successful business.
In Utah, you had a boat and you were doing boat tours?
It was an idea. It was a stupid idea. It was just a dumb fucking idea. Half the lakes are iced over, but we got this incredible, that's a story in itself, but we got this incredible deal on a boat that had sunk and we raised it and it was crazy.
I mean, it says in your resume, it says you've been in the mortgage industry, real estate, stock markets, investing, retailing, computers, clothing lines, talent agencies, courier. I mean, good Lord, what haven't you done? What would you say was the one that was the most successful for you and why?
I started a career company with my friend and I had that little stipend of the 2 months and we had some money saved up.
Yeah.
And we started this courier company and delivering packages just like FedEx or UPS, only more on a local scale. And that hit and became so successful. It was profitable in the first 4 months, 3 to 4 months. And we made our initial money back. And a lot of it was sweat equity. And then a year and a half later, I started the mortgage company because we were working for a lot of mortgage companies. And I wanted to be in the white collar business. I did not want to be in blue collar. Blue collar is nice, but it takes a beating on your body. And I said to my business partner, I go, I don't want to be doing this when I'm 40 or 50. This It's hard enough.
That was my first job. First job was washing dishes. Second job was working on a construction site, digging out holes and carrying hods of bricks and stuff like that. So I get it.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
It's tough, man. And you and I probably wouldn't want to be doing it at our age. But God bless those men who are, God bless those men who are the salt of the earth, those Viking type dudes who still can. So I started a mortgage company. That was our second business. It was a year and a half after the first. We had two of them going at the same time. I was losing my mind. That was profitable in 3 months for our initial thing. And I just started hitting home runs. We started a 1-800 line that we bought something out of because 1-800 lines were big for dating. So we bought one of those. I'm a tinker and I get bored. So we're just constantly building stuff. But the mortgage company was like the jewel in our little empire of stuff for a long time.
Okay.
And we constantly start little side businesses, or we'd have like an employee who was good at something. We'd be like, hey, let's give this guy some money and let him play with it. And we had a lot of things going. And then 2008 came along.
I was just going to say, you're in the mortgage business in 2008?
2008 came along, and the empire that we'd built, I mean, everything came to a complete stop. Every business we had just came to complete and utter stop for a lot of people. And the mortgage business was pretty much wiped out overnight. And so then it was time to find a new gig.
And the guys and women who took the hit were people like you and other friends of mine who were in the mortgage industry, and not the big players who ended up profiting handsomely from packaging these mortgages and selling them in awkward ways. But yeah, I mean, I look back on that time, and I don't think the people who really should have paid. That's my personal opinion. But so you got crushed. What did you do then?
Well, I destroyed everything. My identity, I lost pretty much everything. It destroyed all of our business, everything that I built for almost 20 years, thinking that, okay, this is my retirement package. We got that whole empire thing covered. And so then I had to find something new to do. And I started trying everything. And once again, back to my early days, I tried everything. Like I was doing a lot of bank consulting for a little while with banks and, using my mortgage industry stuff, but eventually that just kept collapsing.
Sure.
And so I tried that for a while, and then I was trying other things. And I was trying to keep our other businesses kind of still trying to get them to roll, but just everyone's money went, we're not spending money. And so my friend said to me, he goes, Chris, you have tried so much stuff. I've watched you try and survive this. He goes, if it came out yesterday in the news that you were an international weapons dealer, he goes, I won't be surprised because you have tried everything. Well, somewhere in there, this little thing started popping up on the media called Twitter. And I monitor media a lot with my brain. I see consistencies and patterns. And I have this insane ADHD that libraries things. And I thought, what is this Twitter? What is going on? And I've always been fascinated with online sales and stuff. And so I started looking at it. What is this Twitter? And I first got on it in 2008 as Twitter /Chris Voss. And I saw that, people were talking on there about brand and stuff and building marketing and things. I'm like, I know marketing and how to run a business and sales. I've been doing it since I was 18. I can do this. And then I started, at first I thought it was stupid because I'm like, why isn't anybody answering me back whenever I say something? This is dumb. This is the dumbest conversation I've ever had. And so I quit it for a couple months, and then I went back to it. I started noticing that if I promoted links to my old companies on my website, I would get clicks. And I'm like, hey, I got like 7,000 clicks this month putting out my websites to try and save my mortgage company, everything. And I'm like, so the more I push this button, the more clicks I get and the more potential money I might be able to make. And I was like, this is a good deal. So I started building a brand. Within a very short time, I had over 100,000 followers on Twitter. I was in the top 1,000. And I was kind of in this top cache of people on Twitter who really understood the Wild West nature, but the importance of what it was and possibly the future of uniting the world. And we were all kind of helping people with Twitter because Twitter was horrible customer service. They didn't even know what they were doing. They were the clown car that crashed into success. So we were teaching people how to do it. And some guy calls me out of the blue one day, a CEO, and he goes, hey man, we see that you're kicking ass on this Twitter thing. We'll pay you to come down and teach us how to do it. I'm like, people pay money for this crap? What? And that's when my first consulting gig started. And I started speaking and touring and teaching people Twitter and having companies pay me. You know, we were building Twitter accounts. We build Twitter accounts, 100,000 and sell them.
Do you think Twitter is still a viable social media outlet?
God, that's a loaded question. I think, yeah, it is. I think it's an important place. I believe in having a brand platform everywhere. You know, I would never pay for their advertising. Let's put it that way.
Where do you go from here? I mean, not just you, but anybody who's looking at selling their brand, selling their product. We've got Facebook, we've got LinkedIn, Instagram, you know, Snapchat, blah, 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 Twitter. What's the future? Where do you see patterns? What would you say is the future in terms of social media, online advertising? Where do you go from here?
It's going to be interesting. AI, I think, is going to have an impact. Web3 claims to have some sort of impact, but I don't think people get it.
What is Web3, just for the listeners?
Web3 is a basic sort of blockchain-ish sort of format where you own your brand. Instead of being on another platform like Facebook or whatever,
right.
You own your own brand, you're paid for your identity and stuff. It's murky in its concepts where people are trying to kind of find an answer to the question, and what can scale. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that have different ideas. NFT was supposed to be one of those things. That's been a complete failure. The metaverse was supposed to be a way where you would have your own brand on the metaverse. Yeah. You know, a virtual store, basically, or brand. You know, for the most part, I do think it comes down to Web3. People are brand building, and everyone is a brand now. Everyone's brand building, and people have to think of themselves as marketable brands, which a lot of people do. If you understand what's going on, Instagram, TikTok, everyone's building a brand. This podcast is building your brand of who you are, telling people who you are, identifying your values, your ethics, your morals, your you know, everything about you that you want people to know about. What your advertising is, your wares, and what you can help people with, et cetera, et cetera. Everything is building a brand. You know, we're all Pillsbury whatever at this point, you know, Coca-Cola's. Mine's just went bad a long time ago. So
yeah. Would you say the highest impact event in your life was the 2008 crisis?
There was probably a time where I would say it was. It's a great question because I lost everything. But out of it came one of the most greatest things that I needed to learn, that it had always been me, that I was the brand, that I was the guy. And that all that stuff, all that things that, you know, a classic line from Fight Club, the things you own end up owning you. Yeah. All that stuff was me. It was Howard Stern losing Jackie Martling as his wingman and thinking that he'd lost his mojo, and then realizing that it had always been Howard Stern all along. And that was important to me. It was a painful, incredibly painful lesson. But it was so important and valuable. And now I live in a world where I'm much happier, you know, not having 100 employees running around, making my life mental, not having bad partners, not having, you know, all that sort of craziness to go with it, and making as much as I made then. Yeah, it's pretty darn nice.
Tell us about the book. You've been referring to it, Beacons of Leadership. First of all, how do people get the book today?
There you go. You can find it on Amazon or anywhere fine books are sold, as I like to say. If you don't mind,
you've got more ratings than most people ever sell their books. So, I mean, it is a very popular book. What do you think makes it so popular?
The centerfold. No, I'm just kidding. There's a centerfold of me in it. No, I'm just kidding. I hope there's not. Let me check real quick. Make sure that's not. Yeah, that's probably why it has more ratings than it. I don't know. I think, well, we market the hell out of it. We don't market as much as we should, but we probably should market it. But the people love leadership, and it's entitled Beacons of Leadership, Inspiring Lessons of Success in Business and Innovation. And it's basically some of my favorite stories of my life in building business, some of my thoughts on leadership, one of the things I talked about in the book that it's really key is you can see there's a lighthouse on the front. And beacons of leadership, the concept that I had is that as a leader, you're like a beacon up on the hill or the shoreline, or you're in a placement of where you broadcast a message of light, of positivity, of everything you want to communicate. Really, it's a communicator, if you will. And people look to that. The ships go by, or people on the shore that might be your employees, they look to that and they go, hey, what's the signal telling us what's going on, and what's the messaging? And so I use the beacons of leadership because people are always inspired by lighthouses, and people look to leaders to be inspired, to be motivated, to be emotionally connected to them. If you really look at today's world, a lot of people are looking for leaders and people to guide them, or people to give them advice.
Desperately.
And desperately, yeah. I mean, sometimes to the point of building your own cults. And so, people seek that. People seek that in mating. People look for leaders. I'm 55 and still dating. Women, when I date them, they look to me to be a leader, as the household, the man of the house. They look to me to lead, and be the masculine leader. People, look for leadership. And so I talk about in the book about how anybody can be a leader. Whether you're a parent, whether you're a father or your child, there seems to be this misnomer where people believe that you have to have a title of CEO to be a leader. And until then, you're just, I don't know, you're just a follower. But
Right.
no, we can all be leaders. We can be leaders in a podcast like yours. We can be leaders as a mother and father of a child. We can be leaders. If you're the middle manager, you can be a leader. You can be, you can have something happen in a emergency event, and there are leaders that emerge from it just out of people going, hey, I'm going to take charge and save us all. So
how do we as a public, as a people, find and groom and elect the right leaders going forward?
Well, that's really hard. To me, your electorate is a reflection of the people. So if your leaders are bad, and they're poor leaders, and I wouldn't even call some of the politicians we have in this world leaders. I would say they're just paper pushers, or they're great in front of cameras. But we've got to look towards values of what leaders really are and understand what leadership is. You look at John F. Kennedy's book,
Profiles in Courage.
Profiles in Courage. People who take risks, who are willing to lead, but people who operate in the moral good for other people, not leaders that are narcissistic, that are out for themselves,
Right.
that are more interested in doing stuff for themselves. People that are interested in doing things for other people and doing things for the country, the people in the country that care about the middle class.
Giving
people
back.
like that.
Giving of
back.
yourself.
Yeah, giving of yourself, not
How
people
do
that
you
are
give
interested
of yourself today, in addition to all of the great things that you're doing from a business perspective?
I think that you had asked me earlier about what was the biggest crisis, I think, in my life, or something of that nature, and whether it was 2008. To me, the biggest crisis was COVID. And it was another moment to do the thing. I had hundreds of speaking engagements lined up. We had all of our shows lined up. I mean, watching in March of 2020, hundreds of $1,000s burn as events were canceled was head spinning. But I at least had the tools from 2008 to go, okay, I can do this. And so at that point, we had the podcast for about 10, 12 years, had talked about just, self-engaging stuff, selfish stuff, like the CEO's business and tech stuff and Silicon Valley and, money.
Yeah.
And I was really depressed, and a friend on Facebook said, here's what you do right now in this moment. You find a lifter, or you be a lifter. And I'm not really a follower, and I really didn't want to be a lifter because it sure sounded like it sucked. I don't want to be in this miserable hole that I'm in, a depression. So What assets do I have? Where's my point of gratitude? What assets do I have? And I said, I got this podcast that people listen to that I built, but I'm sick of talking about this stuff that, who cares about the new iPhone? Who cares about Google, whatever the fuck it's doing? How can I make the world better? How can we change the world? How can we improve people's lives? And I've always been a purveyor of everything because I track everything, and I've got a library of everything. So I can talk about just about any given subject at least on an amateur level, but I can usually chop with it well. And I've read enough news to chop with it well. And so I said, I want to talk about whatever Chris Voss wants to talk about. I'm going to talk about everything. So we're going to invite authors on the show for the first time. Now, we'd had business authors on the show, but we're going to invite everybody, even novelists. No romance novels, though, because there's only so many times during a podcast they say, like, so you guys had sex on the beach again? What? He took his shirt off again? There's only so much that you can do on a show. And God bless romance novels. But it makes a hard show. And so we had all these people on. And I'm like, I'm going to have people on that are going to inspire the world, that are going to motivate people, that are going to educate people. I'm going to have business people like yourself that are going to be on, that are going to maybe help some of these people that are out of work because of COVID, and maybe they're despondent and they need help. They need a lifter. And so I'm going to have people on that we're going to talk about lifting the world. We're going to talk about stuff that we care about. Everything is what we talk about. If you have a book, we're pretty much having you on the Chris Voss Show, unless it's something really toxic or really extraordinarily painfully you're one of those ugly politicians who's just writing hate. We'll have you on. And we won't have Hitler on either, because, there's the book of hate. So we've done that. And to me, that's part of what's giving back. Because, the show isn't like a moneymaker. You do it to build brand and consulting and speaking gigs and everything else. But to me, that's the real give back, is because people can be inspired and hopefully learn. And if it's not, well, I guess we need to work on the show.
Well, Chris, our time's running short, but I really, really am very grateful to have you as a special guest on Blueprint for Wealth. Thanks for joining us today.
There you go. And I was grateful to have you on my show. People should check out your episode. It was brilliant. And your book as well. Your book, I love your book, because I should have built my companies a long time ago to exit. And
it's
I didn't.
It's never too late. It's never too late.
Well, that's what we're doing now. We're changing the name to the Chris Voss Show to the Wayne Zell Show, so that you can buy it.
And you're going to lose all your listeners. And you'll go from 1% down to the bottom 1%.
They'll be like, this guy's way more smart than this idiot we've been listening to for 15 years.
I know a lot of shit, but that's about it. So look, thank you again. And again, if people want to get in touch with you, is it through the chrisvossshow.com? Is that the best way to get in touch and find out?
Or my OnlyFans. Yeah. The chrisvossshow.com. And then you can find the book on Amazon, Beacons of Leadership.
Beacons of Leadership. Great book. Mm-hmm. Everybody should read it. And I've downloaded it myself and have started it. I haven't finished it yet, but I will. And then we'll have him back on to talk more about some of the stories in there, because I know that you've got lots of stories. But again, thank you. And for all of you out there, stay tuned for another special guest and special educational moment on Blueprint for Wealth, because who knows who's going to appear on this next show. Thank you so much. Have a great week.